RDA and Kevin Lee, I will tell you, it's very hard to not Monday morning quarterback this thing, all right? First off, when you look at this fight, RDA, great job. He's got the hardest schedule in MMA. It's unbelievable if you go back and look at who he fought. I mean, he fought Khabib before Khabib mattered, before people understood how good Khabib was. He just fought Kamaru Usman, one fight removed from that being a world title fight. Now he goes right into Kevin Lee. This is just off the top of my head. This is just the last matter of fights, okay? All the hammers in between, the Eddie Alvarez's and a couple of different weight classes, really hard schedule. And he goes out there and has a really hard fight with Kevin Lee. When I watched that fight, and full biasness here, okay? This is not news or ESPN Chael. I'm on my personal time. With full biasness of a Kevin Lee supporter, it's very hard to not look at that fight in hindsight and go, wait a minute. Kevin Lee moves into a weight class that he's never done before and that he openly says is not my weight class. And as a matter of fact, my weight class is not yet identified. It's 165 pounds. And then he goes into a 5-round atmosphere. That is a tremendous ask and a tremendous ballsy and courageous move by Kevin Lee. And I tell you guys that because many people, they aren't going to say that. Right? What happens when your fighter wins? You pat him on the back. What happens when the other fighter loses? You tease him. Tough business if you're a fighter. Fair play by a fan. Tough way to go through life if you're a fighter. So Kevin Lee goes up a weight class into a division that he said, this isn't even where I want to be, but this is what is the division, so I got to go be there. And then he goes into 5 rounds. And I offer that because I'm not sure we've seen anybody yet that can beat Kevin Lee in a 3-round fight. And when you go into these 5-round situations, okay, it does have to beg the question, why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? If it's a title fight and the rules say title fights have to be fight, I understand it. If it's a top contenders fight, I don't know about that. I don't know. And I do have sour grapes. So before you guys write it in the comments section, you got me. Fully admit, I'm making a bit of an excuse here for my guy. That's true. But I think my question is a little bit fair. And I think my commentary that Kevin Lee moving up in weight and then jumping into a 5-round atmosphere, certainly in hindsight, you concede with me that I'm right. If you're going to jump up in weight classes, the basic protocol is you test it out first. Unless you're moving right into a world title fight, you generally would test that out first. You would not go to the top of the bill and have to do 25 minutes. Also, if you were to just look at the first 15 minutes of the fight, I think we have a different outcome. And now you can play this game against me as well. I'm aware of that, right? If we had 10-round fights, every ranking of every division would be completely different. It changes the game. It changes the strategy. It becomes a totally different sport. Some guys are sprinters. Some guys are marathon guys. I understand that. But when you look at that fight for what it was, this was a dog fight. And Kevin Lee, I thought in many ways, I thought in many ways he showed he was the better fighter. Particularly if it was a 3-round atmosphere, which in fairness it should have been when a guy is going up to a new weight for the first time. RDA does a fantastic job in many different positions, but if you end up getting caught in a full mount with a fully sweaty former world champion in RDA on top of you, you're stuck. I don't give a damn who you are. Insert anybody you want. Put Fedor in there. It doesn't matter. You're not getting up from RDA. Ultimately, I felt that Kevin Lee lost one position. I thought the fight as a whole, there was no question in the heart. Either way. By the way, this is a little bit pro Kevin Lee video. Man, it's hard for me. As a fan, when you have a guy in there, it's hard for me. Sure. But I would never discount RDA. Okay, he did a fantastic job, and he came back and he showed resilience. I thought, though, for what the fight was, in fairness, a little bit of a bandit. I get it. I get what I'm doing here. You guys don't have to flame away. I know what I'm doing. And I know I'm being I know I'm being unfair, but I do think that I am accurate that Kevin Lee outpunched him. He certainly closed the distance better. He certainly controlled the takedowns better. Both of these guys at an extremely high pace. Ultimately, Kevin was caught in one bad position, but when it comes down to heart and grit and toughness and who can go on in there, both guys, there was no loser in that department. There was no giving up. There was no letting down. I could even see Kevin Lee when fatigue started to set in. I could see his punches not having the same snap, but he never backed down once. He was still throwing them. And RDA was the same way. RDA was hurting and fading too. This was a high-paced fight. I thought the kicks from Kevin Lee, particularly that right-sided kick, was a new weapon that he put on display. I've sparred with Kevin Lee. I know about that weapon, but I don't know that he showed that as much or at least as effective as he did in this fight. I think there were some real positive takeaways. What would I like to see next? One of three things. I'd love to see the 165-pound division. But I also love opportunity. That isn't just pro, for Kevin Lee and for all the guys that have said, I think Kamaru has even said he's interested. For all the guys that have said they're interested, it's not just for them. I just like opportunity. I would love to see 65-pound division and then move welterweight to 175. That's for me, that's a personal choice. 2, I'd like to see Kevin Lee spend a few months, eat a little bit more food, pump a little bit more weights, and grow into that weight some. Or 3, and I think this is the more likely fix, what I would like to see is Kevin Lee be able to go into a 3-round atmosphere. What's very tough is his stardom shot up. He's youthful, he's good looking, he's fun to watch, he's great on the mic, he's fan friendly. The problem with Kevin Lee is it's very hard to say that he's not a main event fighter. So if you're always fighting in main events, you're always fighting 5 rounds. So old Chael could sit over here and be as sour as I want to after the fact. It's not going to change the thing. So what's Kevin got to do? Be less exciting? Be less fun to watch? Get rid of some of his fan base? Quit cutting those great interviews and wearing cool outfits? No, be less handsome? I mean, what the hell is he supposed to do? The guy's a main event fighter. So I'm not going to get my way. We're going to have to go back into a 5-round fight at the top of the bill. So now the question becomes in what weight class? And as much as I'm talking about 170, being a little bit too big, well, I think 155 was a little bit too small. He is generally in between weights. That will change over time. As you just get a little bit older, right? We all know that. We're all guilty of it, myself included. We gain a little bit of weight. Yeah, that'll happen with Kevin Lee. But he is in a very interesting spot, and he's going to have to learn how to manage energy. It's just a reality. Conor McGregor, very vocal about this when he bumped up. And he said, I was not efficient with my energy, which is a really nice way of saying I got tired. But it's a reality. When you're out there in those kind of atmospheres, when you start to get into that 4th and 5th round, I mean, it becomes a reality to the highest of levels. I will tell you, I know as a conditioning guy, I always get complimented on my cardio and my conditioning and my ability to push the pace. I do get that compliment, in fairness. I'm tired 2 minutes in. The rest of it's an act. I'm acting the part. I'm standing my ground. I'm being disciplined and focused. A 25-round situation, 25-minute situation does change things. And your first time up, which Kevin did, look, there's some growing pains. That's just a reality. To act as though we don't want to see both of those guys fight again, and particularly in main event spots, just isn't true. So I think we're going to have to deal with that. On Team Kevin Lee, we're going to have to deal with that. Going to have to figure it out. Figure out what to do with the size, with the energy. I think he genuinely believed going into that contest, not only can I beat this guy, I can get him out of here. The problem with RD, he's hard to get out of there. If you go follow his past, go look at his fights with anybody. He's hard to get rid of. That might have been a miscalculation by Kevin in hindsight. But what do you do in these fights when you don't win? When you win, you celebrate. When you lose, you plan again. What we should do is, regardless of winning or losing, we should still study the weak points, still identify the high spots, and work to get better. But as athletes, in fairness, we win, we celebrate. If we lose, we reform strategies. We go back to the drawing board. And I think part of that drawing board for Kevin, because I do believe he's going to end up in a main event, which means another 5-round atmosphere. I'll put him in there with anybody right now today, beat up, banged up, and heartbroken right now today for 3 rounds. No, anybody. For 5 rounds, it starts to change the game. I know when I talk to you guys about that, by the way, a lot of times you mistranslate my words and interpret them to mean I'm talking about a guy can't hang in there, he's not tough enough to go. Look, some bodies are built for speed and some are built for duration. When you have a real strong guy, naturally with his DNA, just a muscle guy, yeah, it's built for speed. That's true. So part of the fight isn't just the punches and kicks. Part of the fight for guys that have that DNA like Kevin Lee is learning how to be, to quote Conor McGregor, more efficient with your energy.